I was like, ooh.
Okay. Laura. So I'm nervous about DeafBlind interpreting. So I worry that sometimes, like with touch, maybe working with DeafBlind interpreting, maybe I'll worry about it and that like it'll just get too much. Sherry, do you mean if you're working and maybe you're continuing to work and you don't understand and it just gets too much for you? Or Laura's clarifying. Complicated? Sherry, yes. So, wow. So that's a really good point. So a lot of times touch, it can get overwhelming and walking, and it's just a lot to take in. So wow. Yes, you gotta be able to manage it, and that's a good point. So a little thing about touch, plus just like things getting over your head. So it's best for you to say and know that as time goes on, it will begin to feel more natural and you'll get used to it. But just continue and keep going. And have more interactions, those one-on-ones, and becoming more comfortable with touch and be like in a small group, maybe 3 of you having conversation, touching and using like PT. Things can vary. There's many different people. Each deafblind person's different. And sometimes things will go over your head, but as you gain experience, it will get better. I promise. You'll become more comfortable. But if you do have problems with touch, maybe like your background, something happened before with touch and you can't, then maybe you need to have like a one-on-one experience. And so touch. For you, communication, so you know that person, and that person's depending on you for their communication, and they're processing that touch is this other kind of touch. It's a different kind of touch. It's not that they're touching you, but they're touching you to understand the communication. So that's kind of like my experience and reasoning behind it. Many students, they've been afraid of touch just in general, and they've become more comfortable, but they've gotten more involved and they get to know that person and they might become friends, and never think that might touch again. The touch will never be the same. So I hope that helped you a little bit and helped you maybe become a little more comfortable. DeafBlind interpreting has changed. With PT, protactile, it's not the same as just holding your hand and feeling the signs. So PTASL has started like is somewhat like a new language. It's a special kind of it's a language, PT, for our interpreting. Okay. So I know each student kind of feels nervous when they're first starting out, but I want to let you know that deafblind interpreting, it's such a positive experience, and it has been for me. 2 years ago, I went to a different country for deafblind interpreting, and we went to a deafblind interpreting camp there in Austria. And they set up camps there for deafblind. So it was my first time going to deafblind in another country, and I focused in on those interactions and how to communicate with different individuals, and it just really touched me. And in Europe, disability during the war, and when the war finished and they're hidden all over the country. Yes, Alyssa, what does that sign mean? Europe. That's the sign for Europe. France. Europe. Yep. So deafblind people were hiding and they were scared. Recently, deafblind people all kind of congregated for the first time. So that experience, I kind of want to teach you something today. So right now I'm going to share a PowerPoint with you of the word. Hold on. Okay. So that word autonomy, someone before it means like independence, but that's words kind of changed to meaning like being alone. doesn't really mean that you're alone, like living independent. No. So what it really means is that you can make your own decisions. You don't need someone to decide for you, or people aren't deciding for you. You can make your own decisions for your own life. So that word, we as interpreters, we're supporting someone. So the word agency, that means that there's a person for themselves. So if an interpreter is interpreting for an agency, we represent them. But if they're interpreting for themselves, they're not representing someone. So those words, quality of life. Remember, I think, Sherry, I think that you said something about life. So that quality of life, QOL, that quality of life is really important, that concept. So when I sign alone and autonomy, I sign it like that. So quality of life. So now I want to say, so if there's a deafblind person and they become alone, that means that they trust you with access to information. And they become autonomous. So you're listening and you're interpreting, hear something, you interpret it. That's another kind of all right, Kelly, did you need to say something? So pardon me, interpreter missed that. So it's happened before. So driving, deafblind people in a car, and you're driving I-10, I think, I-10. Yeah, so I was driving and looked at me and they tapped me. I forgot we're out for 40 miles. 40 miles. I said, yeah, I know. The number. Okay. So continuing on, they tapped me again and they said, can you please stop at Burger King, please? Do you mind? And I said, okay. How does a deafblind person tell me where to go? The weather? How? Technology has everything. Access to deafblind people too. The GPS. So they told me the GPS can tell me to slow down. And he told me. The car wasn't driving fast. He said, can you drive slower? I said, okay. So a whole bunch of different types of things. Technology is just really has a lot. Technology is really important. So, access. Anything else? Oh, Alyssa. So, the environment. Oh, it went over my head. So, students are kind of blurry. Just to let you know, trying to see everything, hear everything. How do you know what to pick out and what's important when describing an environment? It's difficult. It's an important skill, though, for this class to have and to know what's important to pick out when describing an environment. And keep adding things, and the more the better. So, yes. So, person becomes autonomous. What should people do? So you should describe what the environment looks like and what to do. For example, a deafblind person enters a room and they're standing for like a presentation, and you describe to them like where people are sitting, where's the interpreter at, what does it look like, how many people are there, maybe on the phone. So you need to decide, they need to be able to make their own decisions based on what you tell them. It is responsibility. It's the interpreter's responsibility. It's my role to let them know as an interpreter. You never know if they're fine or what's important, or if you're like, oh, I'm tired. Well, it means that later on, if something pops up and they're like, well, you never told me. You never said that to me. Okay, well, that's a great example of how you should tell them where things are. So that person with eye contact, 100% deafblind. So we knew each other and it was important. Some people might prefer to look directly at you, and so the class finished and a student started coming up to the interpreter. The interpreter was standing there, and the student comes up. And that student comes up like behind, and the deafblind person started signing to the student to the side of him. Later, someone told him, you didn't tell me that the student was on the side of me. You have to let me know if someone moves. That deafblind person, they work together with the interpreter to help support themselves. It's wonderful when a deafblind person can advocate for themselves and tell the interpreter what they need. It's not the point for the interpreter to make all the decisions. It's not their decision. No. That's my point with autonomy. Okay. So someone recently told me, brought up the word safety. So if I had to pick like what was the most important, safety is up there. Safety is the number one priority. So you're their eyes. If they don't trust you, they have to trust you. It's really important with deafblind interpreting. Trust is built the more you work with them, and it's important. Walk slow. It's fine if you're walking slow. That's totally fine for like your first time interpreting. And then as time goes on, that connection, they'll let you know what they want, and trust will be built. So the deaf-blind person will let you know what they want as time goes on, and they'll tell you what they prefer. Maybe they want to grab your arm or your shoulder, and they'll tell you. Never feel pressured. Never. It's important. Safety is very important. If they tell you something and tell you to walk slower, and if they want to be safe, you need to listen and respect that. Respect is important. You need to respect each other.